The Chicago Bulls season is over. Another year being stuck in the middle, another year of their fans being miserable. The exact same record as last year with 39 wins, a lack of top-end talent, no high draft pick. Where exactly are the Chicago Bulls supposed to be going? I think if you did a survey of the fans of every single team in the league, I think the Chicago Bulls fans would be probably one of the most disappointed fan bases of their team because they just haven't really had anything to root for in a while, and they don't really have all that great of a future in their own eyes. They just can't tank. They can't find a star. They cannot find the top end talent necessary to compete. And it feels like a team and a roster and an organization that is just destined to win between 35 and 45 games for the next basically 100 years. But I'm actually intrigued by the future of the Bulls. Obviously, they don't have any top end talent on the roster, nor do they have a high draft pick, but I don't think the future is all that bleak in Chicago. And the first thing you have to do when identifying what to do moving forward with this roster is figure out who are the keepers, who are the guys that we want to build around, who is the core of our team, because there's a lot of different pieces to sort through. First and foremost, I think Lonzo is a good and solid piece for them to keep around. He's on a cheap deal, and obviously you're concerned about some of the injury stuff long term, but he fits so well in pretty much any team construction you want. I personally would like to keep Lonzo around on the team unless you want to go super tank mode, which we'll talk about later. Vucevic is 34, and the next year of his deal is the last year of his deal. He's on an expiring contract, and in my opinion, if you can get any kind of value at all out of Vucevic, even if it's just kind of like the Caruso deal where they trade him away and they get someone back at the same position that's just younger as you trade him to a team that wants to compete, I think that's the guy that they should move on from. Patrick Williams is pretty much a disaster at this point. Took a step back this year and his career wasn't all that impressive in the first place. And for whatever reason, they signed into this massive deal and he signed long-term until at least 2028. Frankly, it's just a bad move for them, but I don't think they can really get that much out of him if they were to move him, so they're probably going to have to keep him really out of necessity rather than by choice. Kevin Huerter and Zach Collins are guys that they got mid-season. They could be solid rotation pieces for them, but mostly they're just expiring contracts for next year. I'm not really all that excited about them. Coby White's really good, plus he only has 1 year left on his deal, so they've got to look at possibly extending him, but that is absolutely a keeper to me as a real perimeter scoring threat, possibly the best player on the entire team. Tre Jones is a free agent. I'm not super passionate about keeping him. Josh Giddey is a restricted free agent and definitely had some moments for Chicago this year. I wouldn't just want to lose the asset that is Josh Giddey for nothing, so depending on the contract extension, I'd absolutely want to keep him. Ayo Dosunmu is a solid rotation piece that I'm sure they'd like to keep, whose deal is also going to be coming up soon. And then, of course, you have the rookie Buzelis. He's absolutely a keeper. He really turned it on in the second half of the year and is arguably going to be the main piece that they're going to be building around, given the fact they don't have a high pick in the draft. So with all that in mind, the keepers to me that I've identified, guys I want to keep as the core of the team, are Lonzo, Giddey, Ayo, White, and Buzelis, which is a bunch of perimeter guys, some with solid size, but still a lot of perimeter players in Chicago as the keepers of your team. But the interesting and intriguing thing for me in Chicago is what could happen next year. Let's just say that they trade Vucevic and they run it back and they give Giddey and White new deals. Right now, they only have $45 million in salaries committed in the summer of 2026. And even if you add those two guys to pretty solid deals, they're still going to have at least one max cap space slot and some change. That means you can possibly go star hunting in the summer of 2026, which has never really been the mindset for Chicago over the last couple of seasons. But given the history of the city, given the bigger market, it's certainly a tool that they could use. And even though the class isn't great, there is, maybe the possibility of, although unlikely, guys like Damian Lillard, Kevin Durant, Luka Doncic, Trae Young, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and others currently projected to possibly be available in that summer. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to get any of those guys, but more importantly, I think the flexibility that provides the Chicago Bulls is so important right now. You could argue that apart from obviously an MVP caliber player, having a guy like Jokic on your team, having flexibility from a payroll perspective is one of the biggest advantages you can have in the NBA right now, because there's a bunch of teams around the league that got a little bit caught off guard by this new CBA, by the second apron, by how restrictive some of these payroll restrictions are, and they are stuck with their team and are potentially willing to give up some pretty good players, some good assets for less than they normally would, just to give themselves some more flexibility and avoid some of these upcoming tax penalties. And the Bulls are positioned really, really well to be one of the teams that can get some assets and potentially turn this thing around and just get some good value in some trades. There's no guarantee they're going to add anybody big in the summer of 2026, although you never know, things can change quickly in the NBA. But again, I think my excitement has more to do with just the flexibility of that in addition to the younger guys that they have on their roster. I could easily see a scenario where next year the Bulls put themselves in kind of a 2019 Clippers/Nets kind of area, which doesn't sound all that great right now, but at the time that they got Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, it was clear that they had created this environment where they're developing their younger players. They've got up-and-coming guys that fit well around stars, guys like Lonzo, and that created a situation for those two teams where they were able to add some big-time stars in one summer. Now, the counter to all of that is they could also just choose to be really bad, which I'm sure is what a lot of Bulls fans have been hoping they would have done for the last couple of seasons. You could trade Vucevic, maybe trade Lonzo, and just keep Buzelis, White, Giddey, and Io and go super, super young. Just not have any real veteran players on the roster at all. Try and win like 25 games next year, because next year's draft class, as excited as people are about Cooper Flag right now, this year is going to be really, really good, especially at the top in terms of high-end talent. All of a sudden, you add a big-time player at the top of this roster, and it starts to look much, much more intriguing, especially if that guy is a wing or a big. Now, there's obviously concerns about ownership's willingness to spend or go into a tank. That has been an issue for years in Chicago, and the plan should have been for years now to go back into a tank, try and get some high-end talent, and that's clearly the biggest issue with this roster. They've got plenty of solid pieces, they've got plenty of rotation pieces, depth pieces, but they don't have the star to put all of those pieces around, and right now, their avenue towards acquiring that guy, apart from that 2026 free agency plan, is pretty much just limited to trying to get a high pick in the draft or hope that one of their guys like Buzelis really, really develops in a way that would be pretty surprising to most people around the league. Because let's just be honest, the Bulls are the stuck in the middle team. Like when you think about teams that are the warning signs against being stuck in the middle, that team is the Chicago Bulls, but I think that they're in a better position now than they were last offseason and that they were at the deadline. They moved on from Levine. They've identified some guys on their roster that I think could really be helpful for them long term. And even though they're going to have to commit some salary to guys like White and Josh Giddey, I actually really like the core that they're building if they can get a star, a big-time player to put those guys around. Now, outside of the roster, they have a really simple pick situation. They don't owe or are owed any future first-round picks, essentially, so that is just a clean slate for them to move forward, knowing that if they did get the opportunity to trade for a big-time star, they'd have some picks to be able to do so, and that they're going to have an opportunity to pick some guys pretty high up in the draft if they were to tank. And maybe I'm just the only one, maybe I'm going crazy thinking that the Bulls actually have a pretty decent future, but I'm pretty excited about them. Like, obviously, they still need a star, and everybody knows that they should have tanked the last couple of seasons to try and get one. And if they had this roster plus, a 30% chance of getting someone like Cooper Flag this year, then that would obviously change everything for this team. But that's just has not been what they've been about from an ownership perspective, and I think it's unlikely to expect that to change in a massive way. So Bulls fans, try and have some hope. I know it was a weird year. I know it wasn't the season that you guys wanted. I know you wanted to probably win 20 games and be one of these teams that's excited about the lottery coming up, but I really think that in terms of flexibility and some core young pieces, they're in a better spot now than they were a year before. And maybe this time next year, you're looking at a team that's got a star or two, that's got some of these nice pieces around it, and all of a sudden you're looking at a team that could maybe win 50 plus games. It has been a long last decade for the Chicago Bulls and their fans, but I don't think they're nearly as far away from turning things around as most people would expect.